Hello, teammates, and welcome to The Goal Diggers, a program where we discuss stories of leadership and motivation, with sports serving as a metaphor dedicated to daily grinders, corporate athletes, and go-getters. This is Simone Handon, kicking in with my fellow co-hosts, Relly San Agustin and Robbie De Vera, and we are your resident Goal Diggers. So, in our previous episode, we had a conversation with sportswoman, entrepreneur, and the founder of the Sports Management Council of the Philippines, Miss Dina Go Bernardo, who shared with us some lessons from her life on how to challenge the status quo. So these are the 3 tips we gathered from what she shared. First is, it takes grit to challenge the status quo, and that starts with you. Dina shared how she continued to do whatever she set out to do despite others discouraging her. And in fact, others telling her it can't be done drove her to work even harder to prove that there are better ways to do things. Second is, be courageous and have that strong need to make things happen. It takes courage to accept the roles presented to you. So Dina shares how in her role, she made it her responsibility to do what she can to make things better. And third is, be deliberate and improve the ecosystem. Dina's work focuses on bringing people together and providing the opportunities and spaces for healthy collaboration with the common goal of bringing Philippine sports forward. So all of us have gone through our fair share of criticisms and discouragement, and often these come at times when we have the chance to make a difference in our own lives or in the way things are normally done. And Dina's experiences show us the importance of pushing on for the sake of improvement and sustainability, especially in Philippine sports. And speaking of sustainability, today we're going to dig into the story of someone whose work revolves around finding ways to better support the growth of sports in the country. But of course, before we delve into that, I wouldn't be able to do this without the help of my fellow goal diggers. So really, Robbie, what can our teammates expect from this episode?
Thanks, Simone. Hi, guys. It's Saturday, and we welcome you to another episode of The Gold Diggers. We have a very special episode for you tonight as we have with us a top dog in sports marketing and media, having worked for companies such as ABS-CBN, Solar Entertainment, Fox, and now the man in charge of sports for the MVP group of companies. I will say no more, but please stick around because I assure you, this episode will surely be a blast. I will now pass it on to Robbie to formally introduce our special guest. Robbie, take it away.
Thanks, Rels. Hey, teammates, we're excited to welcome our next guest and cap off our first quarter with another fellow gold digger and a household name, particularly in the media industry and in sports. So this evening, we're very privileged to have Mr. Jude Turcuato with us on the program. So please stay tuned as we dig into his life story. Let's formally welcome him on board, Sim.
Thanks, guys. Again, so today we have with us a former executive producer and sportscaster from ABS-CBN. He's the former director of sales and marketing of the Philippine Basketball Association, and he's also the former general manager of Fox Networks Group, and is now the first vice president and head of sports at PLDT and Smart Communications. He's a sports fan and a strong advocate for many of our top athletes in sports programs, and it's a pleasure to have this opportunity to learn from him today. So let's all welcome the one and only Jude Turcuato.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks, Simone. Thanks, Robbie. Thanks, Relly. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. Hi to all of the viewers, the listeners of Gold Diggers. It's awesome to be here. You know, I love this show because it's one of the most practical shows that you'll watch, and really just learning a lot of things about life, about sport, about teamwork. So glad to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Jude. So tell us, what have you been up to lately? I mean, since the start of the pandemic until now.
Well, the pandemic certainly has changed everybody's lives, you know? And I think for me, it was actually a transition already. I was kind of winding down my stint at Fox. It had just been bought by another big company called the Walt Disney Company. So I was winding down, going into a transition into the new job, going into half of the year. But one thing that I do remember that kind of disrupted so much of what I was doing is that I was actually in the middle of renovations uh, for a house at the time, and then the lockdown happened, and we couldn't get it done, and so the house was a huge mess most of last year, and then I was just happy that towards the end of last year they allowed the construction to go on again, and then was actually able to finish it late last year. So, but throughout the past 12 months, it's been a huge transition for me from one changing jobs, renovating the house, and then even my family got to go to the U.S. and I was by myself. I lived like a bachelor for about 2 months during the pandemic. But yeah, all of us had to adjust. And it's a new normal for everyone.
So, other than your new role that you got sometime in 2020, and of course, other than the renovations too, what's been keeping you busy nowadays?
Well, I think in general, again, you have to find some things that can keep you occupied amidst all of this quarantine, amidst all of the restrictions, right? So you spend a lot of time with your family. I've actually taken up and gotten more serious with another sport called golf. So trying to improve myself. I've been playing 2-3 times a year for the past many years. So never improving because of that. But now because it is a sport that kind of does not require a lot of face-to-face contact, and you're fairly isolated. I've tried to kind of learn it a little bit more. I don't want to say master it. I think it'll take a few more years to do that. But yeah, so it's really just spending time with the family, trying to focus on certain things, on how to adapt and adjust in this new world that we live in, both personally and professionally, and then taking on some sports or some activities that might be more conducive to to these new times.
It seems other than biking, everyone's getting into golf nowadays. And I so understand the difficulty of playing golf kasi nagtatampo din yung sport. If you don't play just for a few days, it can really mess up your swing. So Robbie, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, you know how like I love it how with athletes or people who are passionate about sports never stops. So we even find a way to try to do something in this pandemic. And you're right, Sim. It's been biking, it's been golf. I see that a lot on my feed right now. And for Jude, maybe let's help the audience and bring them up to speed and remind them about his roots in sports. So Jude, can you tell us about how you began your sports journey?
Well, actually, for me, I mean, I've always loved sports, right? If you don't, if people don't know, I did grow up in the U.S. In the city of Chicago. So growing up, Chicago is one of I think, the most sports-oriented cities in the world. We have a sports team for practically every sport, right? Especially the American sports like basketball, baseball, football. But we do have other sports just because people just love sports in Chicago, right? So that's where I got my love for sports. So I'm a huge Bulls fan, I'm a huge Cubs fan, I'm a huge Bears fan, Blackhawks fan for hockey. But the thing is, I did grow up in Chicago, but I was born in the Philippines. And I was a sophomore in college, and I was going to college in Evanston at Northwestern at the time. I visited. I went back to the Philippines on vacation, and I just loved it. I just loved the country, the city. We went to. My family's from Palawan, so we went back to Puerto Princesa. I saw the beauty of it all again, and so a lot of it came back. So I said, pagkatapos ko mag-graduate, I wanted to finish school first. I'll go back to the Philippines and kind of just enjoy my roots and kind of give back somehow. So that's why I came back. And then when I came back, I wanted to find something to do. I didn't know what to do, so I tried to play basketball. So I actually wrote at the time the athletic director of Ateneo, Father Raymond Holscher. And I told him, hey, Father, I'm Jude. I play basketball. Can I try out for the team? So I actually played for Team B of Ateneo at the time, and then it turned out that I wasn't really good enough to be Team A. So an opportunity came, and yeah, and that's how I got into this whole thing because I took broadcast communication in Ateneo for my master's after I had graduated, and I saw a posting in the ComDep that said, "Hey, we are looking for courtside reporters for the UAP games. If you're interested, call this number to audition." Right. So that's how it all started. Where I just saw the number, I called it, I auditioned, they liked me, and they put me on. And I made my share of mistakes, but that's how everything got started. And I just got to know people in the sports industry after that. Meeting all the players, meeting all the coaches, meeting everyone. And then tuloy-tuloy na siya within all of my sports career, and that's what jump started it.
That's great. A lot of common, very familiar names to me, at least like Father Holscher, the Comdep. And then, of course, we have you to thank for it was about that time that the UAAP started really getting popular with the kind of content programming that you guys were doing back then. So
No, it was awesome.
Yeah, and I grew up hearing your voice, and then that's why this interview is actually very very iconic as well, for at least for me. I don't know if Sim encountered you before, right? But yeah, of course, your sportscasting journey lending itself to roles within sports also later on. You had some involvements also with like the PBA, and then eventually with Solar there.
Yeah, no, so it just kept on going, right? And I think in many ways, sports really just kind of lit a fire. Being a broadcaster and meeting all of these people, all of these athletes. But I think broadcasting for me, was probably it still is the most fun thing I've ever done as a profession, as a job, right? Because you watch the games, you pour your heart out, you have your emotion out there while you're broadcasting the games. And you're getting people to enjoy the game while you're doing it, right? And you're connected to it. But for me, I thought, I graduated with an engineering degree in college. So broadcasting, although I did study broadcast communication in Ateneo, but in Northwestern it was industrial engineering, right? So I wanted to have a bit more experience in the corporate world. That's why I did start working for other companies. I actually started as a management trainee in at the time a company called La Tondena, now Ginebra San Miguel. The Big J was still the coach when I joined Ginebra, and their office was still in Quiapo. And in fact, Chito Loizaga was also a VP at the time with La Tondena in that franchise, right? So I was in brand management as management trainee, and I went to research, I went to marketing, I went to and then the brand management was the one that I ended up with, but I continued working for different companies, and I just said, I actually worked for some of the biggest Philippine companies with ABS-CBN, and I actually even worked for the Ayala Group for some time, and then not many people know this, but I'm one of the founders of a website at the time called Pinoy Exchange. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, if you're old enough to kind of remember any of that stuff. And the thing is that Ayala had invested into that website, and part of the deal was for us to work for Ayala to run the website for them. So I had experience working for a startup within the Ayala Group as well. And it just went on and on and on. And then eventually I came back to media again, mostly sports with ABS-CBN, and then PBA, and then Solar, and then most recently Fox and Disney. It's been actually Fox was my longest stay. I stayed there 11 years, but before that, I think Solar was at 4 years, and everything else was 2 years or below. I just kept on moving on, I guess. Move on and move on.
It's quite refreshing to hear all these things again. For those who don't know, maybe Rob and Sim, me and Jude go way back. Known him since college, and I worked under him in Solar. So hearing all these stories now, it's just like, wow, it just brings back good memories. Pretty much still remember your career, right, from all our conversations. But right now, and of course we continue to stay in touch. And I think right now it's what I'm curious about is how is it now being being the head of one of the biggest backers in sport. I mean, in the MVP group and really handling all the different brands. How is that for you right now?
When I was in Solar, when I was with you, Relly, I thought I had a dream job, right? Uh, because I loved sports. I worked in sports, and we worked with the PBA and the NBA and Manny Pacquiao and billiards, and then we pretty much did everything except the UAAP when we were in Solar, right? But then I moved to Fox with National Geographic. I was very passionate about Nat Geo. In fact, in college, I only subscribed to two magazines, Sports Illustrated and National Geographic, right? So I moved to Fox because of National Geographic. But in Fox, we launched Fox Sports. We launched Fox Filipino. We launched a variety of different brands and shows. And then in my mind, how can I top this? This is now my dream job. I thought I had a dream job in Solar, but now, having expanded from just Solar Sports, now I was working with National Geographic Explorers. I was doing documentaries. I was doing Fox Sports, and I was going to the Fox lot in Century City, working with the Fox Sports people there, right? And so now I was like, this is a dream job. Fox even sent me to Boston to study an executive course at Harvard Business School, right? So it was really for me. I was actually in a dream again, right? Having a dream job. But I'll tell you, the 6 months I've had with this new gig with the MVP group, I could say that this is even a bigger dream job, right? So I've had dream jobs after one dream job after another. So this is really another huge dream job for me because of the way the management looks at sports and how passionate they are and how sincere they are in wanting to have an impact in nation building through sports, right? So and it's a dream because they have the resources and they have the passion, and I'm right in the middle of it to kind of execute and put it together, right? So it's again it's unfortunate that we're in this quarantine and we're in this pandemic because we could have done so much more, because sport has been suspended in many cases, but. But I guess the short answer to my long diatribe is that I'm in my dream job once again.
It's a dream job indeed, right? And yeah, and I think for us, I mean, for those who've taken the path of being in sports and sports media, we try to be the entrepreneur or the business or the corporate person first, and then now before we even try to figure out, hey, we want to be able to, like what you said, nation build or get into grassroots or sports development, and that's pretty much the path that's really one for the books for you, man. And congratulations on the new role, and we wish you all the best and the support.
No, I truly appreciate it, and I definitely think it won't succeed without the whole industry and the whole sports community getting together and trying to get stuff done. I think for us, we just have a little bit more influence because of the resources that we have. But I do think it's everybody's. I mean, everybody's part of the team, right? That needs to kind of contribute in doing it.
So you've had such an interesting career. You've been moving from one dream job to another, and you've had a long career, particularly even in sports. So what is it exactly about sports that you love so much, and how important of a role has it played in your journey so far?
Well, I think sport is the single most important thing that can bring people together, right? And I think it's so important for me because it's a reflection of life. It's the easiest thing to reference when you're trying to find a life lesson or find a road to going somewhere, right? Because sport has teamwork, it has hard work, it has struggle, it has adversity, it has competition, it has all of these things. And I think if you, it's actually, on TV, the most popular shows now are reality TV, right? But if you think about it, sport is the ultimate reality TV because you don't know what's going to happen, right? And it's real. People are going at it, going against each other. The drama is there. And the training that comes with it. So I do think that sport in and of itself is such a microcosm of life. It's such a great reflection of how people can live and should live. And it's a great lesson for everybody, right? And then ako, ano, my boss right now is si Al Pandilio, always references sports when he does, as president of Smart, he uses sport as the one to inspire the whole company. Because it's the best reference to making sure that people are working together, making sure people are preparing, making sure training, so you can win, diba? Because everybody wants to be a winner. So sport is absolutely a huge part of how I live my life, and I think a huge part of how my career has gone so far, and not necessarily directly, but I think even indirectly, just with the attitude and the psychology behind it.
Every sports fan, every sports person understands the values that you can get from sports. So, and of course, speaking of sports fans, I'm sure a lot of people remember you as Jude Kaboom Turcuato. So, how did you end up in sportscasting, and was there something specific you wanted to achieve as a sportscaster? Could you tell us more about that?
Well, as I mentioned before, I think this was more of a serendipitous moment for me back then, right? I never thought I would get into sportscasting. That was never part of my dream. I guess I could also call it a dream job for me, right? But it's not something that I aspired to. But when I got there, it was awesome, right? So I got it because I auditioned. I just saw the sign, like I said before. But I think when I started doing sportscasting, I tried to again think of how I can make people remember and make people be more entertained, right? While watching the games themselves, right? Especially, the best sportscaster bring out the best entertainment out of boring games, right? So I that's why I thought through different things that we can do to kind of spice it up a little, and that's where the whole Kaboom came from. So I wanted to be different and make some sort of impact. I still remember the first time I used it. I think I was with Dominic Uy doing a PBL game or something, and then sabi ko, Dom, I want to try something. And then, and it was a great way to try it because PBL at the time didn't have a lot of viewership. Sabi ko, so in my mind, if this crashes and burns, then nobody would know, right? But if it does well, then we'll see, diba? So I did that first one, when somebody hit the 3-pointer, and Dom just kind of looked at me and says, "Hey, that kind of fits, right?" So after that, I just started doing it, and then I started doing it in games where people were actually watching, so people remembered.
I mean, you are known as Jude Kaboom Turcuato, and you were pretty much at the top of your game as a sportscaster, even. So, so why is it that eventually you decided to leave?
Yeah, well, I don't know about if I was at the top of my game, but I absolutely enjoyed and I'm very passionate about being able to do games, right? I mean, it was just so much fun. I did think I did a great job. But yeah, as I mentioned before, I was a management engineer, and I kind of, in my mind, I wanted something more long term that I can kind of grow from, right? With sportscasting, I think there certainly is growth, but you can only say kaboom so many times, or you can only express it, or think of the different catchphrases so many times, or there's only so many games that you can cover here and there, right? So I thought that there was a little bit of a limitation towards that, and the main advantage that I had, or at least the value that I saw in it, was that I enjoyed it so much, right? But I didn't think that I could sustain it as far as my career in the whole idea of having a long-term professional I guess, career, if you could think that, and to be able to sustain it, because it wasn't I guess, a normal cycle for, like when you do sports casting, you're very dependent on when the games are, who wins. Sometimes UAP is very popular when it's Ateneo Lasal, but if it's another school and another school, it might not be as popular, and the demand might not be as good. So there's a lot of different factors that you don't control, and you're very dependent on other things, right? So I wanted to kind of try other things outside of just doing that, and I enjoyed it a lot. But I wanted the fulfillment of learning more things, growing a bit more, and having more influence in making a difference. That's why I moved on, I guess.
You actually shared with us an interesting concept, a Japanese concept, the ikigai. Could you tell us more about that and how it influenced your decision also in terms of moving from one job to another?
Yeah, so I came across Ikigai back in college, and I guess it was more of just, something that's very simple, that I thought made sense for me, if I wanted to look at how I wanted to look at my career, and what decisions I would make in my life, right? So the Ikigai actually has four things that the Japanese say should be part of what you do in life if you want to have fulfillment, and if you want to have success, right? So, and then it's simple four things, right? The first is that you have to love and be passionate about that thing. So whatever it is that you do, you just have to be passionate about it, right? And then the second one is that not only do you have to be passionate about it, you have to be good at it. Because you can be passionate all you want about something, but if you just don't have the God-given talent to be able to get it done, then I don't think it'll work out long term as well. And the third one is that it has to benefit society, right? So you can be passionate about something and good about something, but if it hurts people, right? Like Hitler was very passionate about conquering the world, and he was very good about inspiring people to to follow him in conquering the world, but it hurt people, right? So that has to be part of the equation. That it can't be, and then the fourth one is that it has to be sustainable. That you have to be able to actually have some sort of either monetary or fulfillment factor into the whole thing in order for you to continue doing it. Because even if it's good, I say, because I work for National Geographic, right? So our explorers are kind of like that, right? But they need the grants and the funding from the National Geographic Society. Otherwise, the whole ikigai falls apart, because they're passionate, they're doing good, they're really good at what they do. But if they don't get that grant from the National Geographic Society, then they can't sustain it, right? Whatever it is that they do as explorers. So that's how I've looked at my career and my life in every decision that I've made, and that's why maybe I've jumped from one to the other, because maybe I've seen more passion here, or more I can impact more people in this one, and then, or I'm better at this. I guess those four things for me, if you put it together and you get that sweet spot in the middle, I more times than not, you'd be very, very fulfilled as a professional.
You've been mentioning a lot about finding value and even sustainability, and even related to ikigai and what you do now. I just want to dig deeper into your thinking process, because now your career, that's exactly what you're doing. You're finding value in things, and of course, making sure you're able to present it to the different key partners in the industry. So yeah, could you tell us more about your thinking process?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, value is what fuels our world, right? People don't only do things if they feel like there's value to them, right? And you can equate that to almost anything in life, right? And that's how I think, if a business or a group or a team would succeed, they would need to go back to that core thinking of what value does this give to me. So I do think in anything that's done, creating value, whether it's a product, whether it's a relationship, whether whatever it is probably the single most important thing that can fuel a business, a relationship, anything, right? So then if you think about all of the things in life, right, the ones that have the most success are the ones that people have the most perceived value, right? Because and I think I kind of learned this when I was a management trainee in La Tondena at the time, because I was under the non-liquor department, and we were handling a water brand called Viva mineral water at the time. And and for us, all of us were like, hey, water is water, right? But what kind of value can you give to it? Like, so for us, we kind of researched what minerals are in mineral water. What kind of value can we give? Whatever it is, because Viva, I guess the people don't know, is actually not filtered, and it's through a mineral process from Mount Canlaon in the south, right? So in any case, that's where I started thinking, hey, if we are to have success in anything, whether it's brand management, or you have to give value. You have to increase the value of yourself. You have to increase the value of your product. You have to increase the value of your team. And then a lot of things will go after that, right? And yan, nangyayari palagi yan, all the cell phones. Why do people think Apple, why are people willing to pay, whatever, 50, 60, 70, 80,000 pesos for an Apple iPhone? Whereas you try to sell another phone for, half that, the people won't even touch it. And I think you'll see the same with cars, you'll see the same with apparel, because value was created in doing that. So I do think it's very important in anything that you do, actually, in creating as much value as possible.
It's nice to be hearing all these things from you, and then to really get to see the perspective of someone from your position also, and of course creating value is something we want. That's the reason why we started this podcast in the first place. We want to be able to find a way to add value to Philippine sports also, and help our fellow sports people find our way here. So thank you for that. Of course, I don't want to hog all the questions. So now I'm gonna have to turn you over to Robbie. So Robbie, take it away.
Thanks so much, Tim, and super, super great segment so far. I totally agree with sports being a great metaphor for life, and like the contribution that it can make with regard to lending you life lessons. And we carry, as athletes, we carry those until today. Totally love as well the history of the kaboom, which is all about really creating value. Like, so what you mentioned, how we can bring like a different approach, creating excitement to an otherwise can be the usual type of product or service, right? So totally talked about how to make things memorable and entertaining, especially when you first started out. And I also love the point on ikigai. So being passionate, being good, having a benefit to society, and being sustainable. So badly put, ikigai is reason for being, and super solid, especially on the part on sustainability. And speaking of the cycle of sustainability, I totally cannot emphasize the importance of that more on creating, delivering, and exchanging value, right? And creating that. So especially when it comes to sports and strategic sponsorships, and we know that. So, but let me first focus on your transition after your sportscasting stint, right? So in line with what you shared on value creation to delivery, what you've managed to do is create for yourself enough value to merit yourself being considered for a more leadership role, a decision-making and management role in media, starting with your role as an executive director for ABS-CBN. So what came next?
Well, with after ABS-CBN, I actually had that opportunity to move to the PBA, and I think that's where a lot of the realization of creating value came in, right? I think with the PBA at the time, I think this was early 2000s when I had left ABS. I think 2002 or 2003, something like that. And at the time, a lot of people kept on referring to the PBA as the glory days were back with Chris Patayota and the early 80s, this and that, and or Pure Foods in the 90s with Alvin Patrimonio. But in my mind, I mean, those were great days, but the PBA is still here. So we needed to kind of create an atmosphere where people can feel that, hey, there's enough value here for us to continue watching or to pay for the tickets to watch, right? So there's a lot of things that I felt that we would be able to do. I couldn't control the games, right? Because the games are really up to the coaches and the players, whether they're exciting or not exciting or whatever, right? But I could control what the people saw while they were on the venue, especially when they were in the venue, right? So I treated it like an event. Every single game was an event, right? So if you entertain people and have them remember that experience that they had, right? Because people pay 15, 20, 25,000 pesos for concerts, right? For concert tickets to like these big, and then they feel like it's worth it because there's value. Exactly. Like some people, you can't even get them there for free, but some willing to pay 20,000, right? So what I did was I really ramped up parang the audiovisual and entertainment part of the games themselves, right? So we averaged about maybe 5 to 7,000 fans per day, per game day, which is not that great, but not bad. But I always compared it to an event, right? If you had an event and you had 5,000 people attend that event, you would think it's a success, right? Like if you had a mall event and you had 5,000 people there, I think for the most part, all of the metrics of any sponsor or company, they would say, hey, we got 5,000 people in the middle of the mall. That's a good event, right? So and for me, that's a captured market that we had. So we made all of the airtime within the game that was not a game very valuable. So the pre-game, we produced a lot of things in the pre-game, halftime, timeouts, in between games. We had, we created I talked to a lot of the cheer dance groups, all over to see, and we put together a cheer dance team so that people can have all of these, dancers during the games, and then we gave away a lot of things. We had a lot of sound effects and some audiovisual stuff. So we made it. We tried to do it like a full-fledged entertainment, so that when people leave, they'll remember that, hey, I won a shirt, or that guy was funny. If not the game, now hopefully they remember the game. But I could control all the other things that they might be able to remember also, right? And that's what we did. We created a value in that experience so that people will want to go back and say, sulit yung whatever 200 pesos na binayad ko, o 400 pesos binayad ko kasi I didn't only see a game, I saw nice videos, I saw cheer dance team doing stuff, I won prizes. Diba? Maraming so it became a challenge for me to be able to do that within the PBA game. So that's maybe my first foray into really having the decision making or the influence that I had to actually impact the value of the games. And then the attendance grew. I think it was like almost 20%. I think 18-19%. From the prior year, and I mean it wasn't just because of that, but I do think people remembered, right? So they came back and they remembered being entertained.
Super solid, super solid. So what I like about it, what you mentioned is likening the PBA games to an entertainment event, right? It totally makes sense because exactly what you said, you're making something out of nothing, out of the dead air time. And the non-playing moment is trying to make sure that badly put, everything is a profitable moment, right? You're selling things in segments, you're creating value so that there can be an exchange there. And at the end of the day, it's building a brand. And the PBA is actually one of the strongest branded sports events in the country, where 3 points are you can sell a 3 point shot, you can sell a last 2 minutes, right? You can sell a timeout, all these
Yeah.
things. Even you can even give like how the US does it, like have kiss cam moments and all these smile of the day, right? So
Yeah, yeah. No, one of the things that I was actually proud of, and I think a lot of people remember it at the time, was the yeah. So see, rarely remembered, right? So the 3 point shot. There was this tag, a jingle of McDonald's, I think, that says "pa pa pa pa." Like McDonald's did that. So every time there was a 3 pointer, I went to McDonald's and I said, hey, every time there's a 3 pointer, that audio can be a signal, right? So people were anticipating, pa 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 pa, every time somebody would hit a three, right? So it wasn't quite kaboom, but at least in the venue, people expected it already. So that was one of the things that we did, and we got, we got value from McDonald's at the time.
yeah, I totally believe in branded repetitive elements to help get the message across, number one, and then really make it an entertainment experience. What I like about what we shared in our pre-discussion, though, is also your mention of John Spolstra's book, right? Which you said that you used as the playbook on how you attack that challenge with the PBA assignment. So can you tell us more about that?
Well, no, exactly the playbook that I used, because John Spolstra was the general manager of the Portland Trailblazers back in the day. I think it was in the 80s. And his best player was a guy named Derek Coleman, right? He went to Syracuse University, but he was a fairly good player. I think he was one or two number one overall pick or something. But he was a bad boy, right? He always kept on getting in trouble, and people didn't like him and all that stuff. So that's where Spolstra got the idea, like, hey, my team stinks. Nobody wants to watch my team, right? But what can I control to get people to want to watch, right? So, and he thought of all of these different things. Number one, the other team is also there, and they have some stars that people might want to watch. Like, let's say Michael Jordan, that's the same era, right? So if Michael Jordan comes, he marketed the heck out of Michael Jordan, not Derek Coleman, right? Because he knew where the value was, right? He knew that it was with Jordan or whoever else that was coming in, that was coming. I know. So all of the ads actually, I made a mistake. The Portland Trailblazers was later on, but this was New Jersey Nets when he was a GM. But he was also the GM of Portland later on. But yeah, so having all of your marketing materials for the New Jersey Nets, and it's all Michael Jordan or it's all Larry Bird or whatever, is not normal. But he knew that's what people would want to watch, right? So that's how he did it. And then and he talked about exactly what we tried to do in the PBA, where getting every single second outside of the actual action of the games and putting value to it, right? So the timeouts and the half times and the pre-game and the post-game, right? I mean, all of that, there's eyeballs that you could have, and then that people you can entertain. So yeah, so that book of, I mean, I went even as far as ticketing, right? Like like he had some sales I know there where he because the PBA actually didn't do this, and then we were about to do it before I moved to Solar. We didn't actually do it, but I was going to create ticketing packages with the tourism board, with the DOT, to convince people outside of Manila. Because there's all these tours, right? That you come, foreigners or local tourism, and then they take you to Intramuros, they take you to ganyan ganyan, right? And there's these buses, okay. And I said, why can't the PBA game be part of that tour, right? And the tour guides loved it. And I said, we'll give you discount, we'll give you 50% off on the tickets if you get them to be this part of your tour. So we had a busload right away, to watch. and people from the province would love to watch a PBA game. It's an experience, right? Especially if you make it, with all this entertainment stuff along with the games for the non basketball fans, right? And then I even had some ideas that we never got to implement, like having sandwich signs, people selling tickets outside the stadium. Because people, I know sometimes you don't think about watching a game, but if you're near Araneta Coliseum and then you see somebody, with hey, you can get tickets. It's easy. You can get another, 500, 600 people doing that, right? In the stadium. So all of that stuff was in that book. So it wasn't. I mean, I can't take credit for a lot of it, but I can take credit for recognizing it and trying to copy it.
Exactly. So we have you to thank for reading it and implementing it, right? I mean, at the very least.
Yeah.
I love what you said, because sports tourism, I really believe in that. There's really a market for that, and it's a big thing in other countries. It's definitely applicable in Philippines, right? And what you just mentioned speaks about two things. It's all about creating value, and also, I think more importantly, it's also knowing your consumer and what they value, right? So finding what they value and then delivering to them that value and increase your chances of winning, right? So my last question, I want to talk about your eventual transition to a more media executive role after the PBA. When you delved into your roles in Solar and then Fox, because your stints there were both banner moments as well. Because I recall, even for Solar, you had a world first also with regard to basketball programming, and in Fox also you were tasked to grow the network in the region, right? So what did success look like for you in those roles, and how are you able to deliver and create value that you talk about?
Well, I guess for me, what's been I guess a tried and tested formula as a leader, if you wanted to disrupt or if you want to make impact, is you always do your best and try to determine what the world will be 2 years from now, or what the world will be 1 year from now, and you try to make a decision based on what you think that is, right? And then you leave it to your team to kind of execute whatever needs to be executed now, but you need to look ahead, right? Because the decisions now will impact a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, right? And that's really how for me that's how most of the success and the difference that I've made has been that when I've had the influence and I have had the decision. All the decisions in Solar, right? With I guess starting a basketball channel called Basketball TV, right? So I tried to with my with the management, with the owners of Solar, and how to justify it, this and that. But in my mind, hey, if we're gonna get NBA, and then next year we're gonna bid for PBA, and then the year after that we're gonna. So in my mind, I was looking ahead, right? Right now, it might not be what you think it is, or but hey, it might succeed, it might not succeed, but we gotta plant the seeds already for next year or for 2 years from now or for whatever, right? So with Fox, it was the same thing. Thinking through how do we launch certain things, what's going to be the landscape. I think most recently in the last 4 or 5 years, it's all of this OTT. So we had to figure out. I think in fact we launched an app called Fox Plus, which is now discontinued because we have Disney Plus and Disney bought us when I was there. But those are the type of things that I think we needed to anticipate. And then the same thing is happening now with my current position, right? Where do I see the landscape being in 2022? Where is it going to be in 2023? And I'm making decisions now, and I'm starting things now that I think will impact it down the line, right? So I think that's really, maybe it was a learning for me, but it's what I think made all of why I'm where I am successful, and that's why I've never had to look for jobs. It's like it's more. I've been asked to move on, and that's why, in fact, I only stayed 2-3 years because I see another opportunity that presents itself. Right, I'm happy that Fox it lasted 11 years, but because it was like compartmentalized because. We had I think we started with National Geographic, and then we launched Fox, and then we had sports, and then we had movies, and then we had this OTT app, and we just kept on thinking of all these different things and how the landscape will be down the line, right? I do think that's probably what's made the difference. From then on, even up to now, you have to kind of look forward. And it's tough. I have no idea how things will be next year, especially with all of this stuff. Certainly I didn't have any idea there would be a pandemic back in 2019, right? When I was trying to plan out everything. This was the pandemic was not one of the things that I took into account. But now those are things that I always think about. Some you get right, some you get wrong. But in order for you to succeed, you need to make decisions down the line.
That's great advice for leaders, right? So allow me to recap what you just mentioned. So it's all about anticipating future needs, and it really speaks about the foresight as a leader. So like looking ahead, as you mentioned, determining what will be needed by the market in maybe a couple years' time. Speaks about the importance of strategic foresight or strategic planning, right? I always say this. I picked it up somewhere. I don't know where, but I'll credit it someday later. But it's all about thinking things through, then following through, right? So it's delivering that value eventually to the consumer.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for that. That's a really great segment. But you spoke about your transition now to your current role, and I take it over to Relly to fully flesh out that particular bit. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thanks, Rob. Quite very interesting. I hope the audience is learning, and I'm actually relearning, from what you've been saying, Jude, and it's still a little bit spot on with what we've been doing. It's really like, again, creating value. I also like the bit part of actually planning ahead, having that foresight, right? Even if it works or it doesn't, at least there's a plan 2-3 years down the road, and that's something that that every leader or every manager should always have in mind when taking on opportunities, and it has worked well for you in your 20-year career, and I can attest to that. Your accomplishments with, again, ABS, with Solar, with Fox, Nat Geo, and overseeing pretty much everything, right? But now with the MVP group, the thought of overseeing all the sporting initiatives from the PBA, Gilas, MVP Sports Foundation, and more, I'm sure, is quite different from sports media. How challenging is this for you, and what was your mindset when you took on this job 6 months ago?
Well, I think I know. It's probably the biggest, most challenging thing I've ever done, right? And because I think I already knew that the group was very big into sports, and I'll tell you, it was even bigger than I thought. Just the amount of resources they put in, the amount of passion that goes into a lot of these decisions. I guess I'm fairly proud to be part of this group, but it's something that I actually I'm scared to death of because a lot of the decisions that you make will now have bigger impact. Because with Solar we made a lot of mistakes here and there. Same with Fox, but the thing is, there's a little bit of cover, right? Because you're not running things for the league, you're not running the teams, you're not running, you don't have with the athletes, you're not the one training them or whatever, right? It's really telling stories, right? That's really the bottom line for being in media, telling stories in a good way, and doing it. So now, I think it's a huge challenge. I love it. I think it's because of the potential, right? Because if we get it right, we'll get a gold medal in the Olympics. if we get it right, we'll win a game in the World Cup or whatever for FIBA, right? If we get it right, we'll qualify whatever our women's team first time for FIBA, not FIBA, for FIFA, right? The World Cup. Those type of things, the buffer is the buffer smaller, basically, on the mistakes, right? But I guess it just makes it even more exciting because the risk is higher, but the reward is also much higher, right? So that's how I think I'm looking at it. I'm excited about it. I hope everything works out because it's really for the best of athletics, of sports, and the country itself.
I agree. It's very, very exciting, right? I hate to say it, but you're in the hot seat, man, of actually, handling one of the biggest sports development programs that you can dream of, right? I mean, you can do some little leagues here, do clinics here, but this is really on a big scale. But this is where again your whole forward thinking of, yeah, we got to get a gold medal here. We want the Malditas to actually qualify for the Women's World Cup, actually win a game in the FIBA World Cup. This is something, it's still up your alley and still within plans. And it's now just a different scenario, but I think the same formula is there, right? And
no, it's planning, looking ahead, strategizing. I mean, even as simple as I give you an example in the last 2 weeks, right? This happened. So there's this PBA draft, right? And there's all these good players being drafted, this and that. And then there's a couple of Phil-Ams or Phil foreigners that didn't quite get their papers in time because of the pandemic, right? But in my mind, hey, we need players for the 3-on-3. We need, and then the requirements are different for FIBA. The requirements are different for the PBA. So. And then there's I guess the point of the matter is then we went after. I said, hey, let's go after these players. They're not eligible for this draft, but they're eligible for here, and they're the best players ever, not ever in the draft, not drafted. So we had to figure out how to get to these players. One was in Israel, one was in the U.S. Got in touch with them. Hey, would you be willing to fly in, do this, be our 3-on-3 representative for the Philippines, 3-on-3 representative for the PBA, this and that. So stuff like that, I guess. Even like one of the first things I did when I came in was, hey, how do we connect our PBA team? Because TNT, I mean, do you even know what the moniker is of TNT, right? Because everybody knows Ginebra, but not TNT, right? Because I worked for the PBA and that was my problem before. Nobody knew the other teams. But yeah, so for me, since Smart had a huge campaign using the brand Giga, they had this Giga Life, Giga Sports, Giga Games, Giga this, Giga that. We needed to put Giga into the TNT, so that the marketing team can buy into the PBA team a lot more. So we renamed it Tropang Giga, right? So now the team has more relevance to our marketing campaign because of the Giga brand, right? So I think moving forward, we can now do a lot more things within what the marketing of Smart is doing and the team itself, right? So stuff like that. I mean, I guess, and that's very different from figuring out what show will be a hit next, or anticipating media stuff, right? So but I guess it's a huge challenge, and it's fun.
it's nice, really connecting the brands there. No, now let's say I want to talk about let's say FIBA World Cup 2023, and then you mentioned that you secured the rights for the Olympics. Out of curiosity, what is the benefit of having these under the group's belt? I mean, why? And what role do you play in this?
Yeah. So again, I for me, big sporting events is the number one thing that brings people together, right? In fact, McCann Erickson had a survey and a research before the pandemic that asked people around the world, what do you think has brought you together? You know, what brings people together the most? And number one came out sporting events, right? Pandemic was, I think, number four. I think religious event was like in the top 10. But there's a lot of different calamities. I think was number two. Like if something like Andoy happens, it brings people together, right? But you don't want the calamity to happen just so you can bring people together for sure, right? But sport is number one out of all of them. And if you think about it, the times that this country has been brought together was sport, right? When Manny Pacquiao fights, the country is together. You know, nobody's out driving or whatever. When Gilas plays, countries together. They're, you know, everybody's rooting for the Philippines, right? And I think it's the same concept for us, right? Associating ourselves to these big events that will bring people together, right? With FIBA, we're gonna have a team. Gilas will play, right? Because we're the host, we don't have to qualify. That's gonna bring people together, and that's gonna build a nation, right? So it's worth for us to really go through all this trouble in hosting it. Because you're gonna see Kai Soto go up against I don't know, maybe Kevin Durant or whoever else the NBA players will be there, right? You're gonna see Dwight Ramos. You're gonna see whoever else, right? And again, we're planning for 2023, right? The team we're building now for Gilas is not the best players now. It's who we think will be the best players in 2023, right? So that's who we're talking to, and that's why I think it's acceptable to have all these young guys, because 3 years from now, if we can continue training together, they'll be a strong team, right? And the same thing with the Olympics. You know, I've told a lot of people that this is the best chance we have at getting a gold medal, right? We have at least four to five Olympians who will go to Tokyo and have a legitimate shot at a gold medal, right? And legitimate meaning. EJ Obiena in pole vault just won the world championship, beat the prior Olympic gold medalist 3 months ago. That's a legitimate shot because he's a world champion now, right? So why wouldn't he have a shot at getting gold in the Olympics if he's already beat the gold medalist last 4 years ago, right? Hidilyn Diaz already won silver medal in the Olympics, right? Why can't she win gold this time around? I mean, that's just, you know, a few kilos here and there, right? Kaloy Yulo has already won the world championships, ranked number 2 now, right? Why can't he win the gold medal in doing it, right? So if you think through, I mean, and I think we have 4 boxers now also. And boxing, ano yan eh, it's a crapshoot, right? Depending on the judges, and you never know, right? We can also do that. And some other things, like Margie Vidal is about to qualify for skateboarding. And I've already named, I think, 4 or 5 names, right? Wala pa dyan si Bianca Pagdanganan or Yuka Sasso for golf, who won the Asian Games gold. And as we know, Asians are some of the best golfers in the world, right? So I don't think it's out of the question that they can also do well in that sport, right? So I think getting the Olympic rights is important because we can now tell this story and we can now build the psyche of our country and associate ourselves to something that will we need heroes, man. You know, I mean, with all of this stuff happening now. With sport being shut down for the most part, at least here, we need as much positive stories. We need these heroes as much as we can, right? Hey, they might win, they might not win, but we got to give it a shot.
Great, that's great. Okay, so now, my last question. We know that sports. You mentioned sports brings us together. It brings the nation together. The potential of our athletes actually winning. Now, put yourself now in your current position, right? Having to deal with the MVP group of companies. How do you see the synergy happening there with both, the brands, PLDT, Smart, MVP Sports Foundation, and sports moving forward? How do you see this moving into the future?
Yeah. So I think not only is sport the thing that brings people together. I think it's also if you take it in its entirety, it's also the number one activity that everybody participates in, right? Maybe it's a little bit skewed to golf and cycling now, But I'll add one more sport that people don't consider a sport, but esports, right? That has grown through the roof because of this pandemic, right? So I think with all of these things happening, I think the eyeballs, the people participating, it's a natural fit for any brand and any company to be able to attach themselves to these activities and to these properties to kind of help out, right? Especially with the product that we have in Smart, right? Because our product is telco, right? Communication, fiber, 5G. I mean, this is how we connect people, right? So attaching our brand to a lot of these things where people get connected and go together is not a reach, right? So in fact it's a great fit for us to utilize it, especially now. Now I think one of the things that we've had to adjust and pivot is really from competition to training, online training, right? Because you can't compete face to face anymore, but we have access to coaches, we have access to athletes. Maybe we can connect the fans to the athletes. Maybe we could have more, online workshops, training stuff that can happen. And what are they going to use? They have to use fiber. They have to use 5G. They have to use all of these tools to be able to connect with other people, right? So I do think that the company is in a great position to be able to help bridge all of the gaps that's happening now and even beyond the pandemic.
It's great. A great learning there. Again, it's another formula of you actually creating value for the brands, the perceived value, how you connect it, with sports, and really talking about the emotional connection with the brands, with the sport, and then the consumer. So, hey, thanks a lot, Jude, for sharing with us your insights. I will now turn you over to Simone for the wrap up.
Yeah, I think we enjoyed a little too much asking questions and learning more from Jude today. But we've learned so much from your life story, and if you were to summarize, what are the 3 tips we can learn from your experience on how to create value?
Well, I think, I don't know if I can get up to 3, but for me, as I mentioned, I think having the mindset of looking ahead, because whatever you see and what you feel will be the truth and the reality, down the line, will make you have really excellent decision making now, right? In doing whatever it is that you're doing now. So I think always anticipating that, and then for me, a lot of the value is derived from storytelling as well, especially since I come from media, right? So people actually, for the most part, the value is probably there. People just don't know about it, right? I mentioned the mineral water before, right? Until you tell people the story about mineral water and why it's better for you, why it's healthier, yada yada yada, they think it's just water, right? So now bottled water is more expensive than gasoline, right? On a per liter basis. So I think those types of things where you have to learn how to communicate and tell the story the right way to be able to create all of that value that can be perceived. And of course, for me, part of the delivery as well is just try to learn to execute well, right? Make your product as good as you can, whatever it is. Whether it's a fast-moving consumer goods product or whether for me it's like a basketball team, right? Figure it out. Figure out how to get the chemistry or the best coach or the best teamwork in doing it, and having that kind of culture of always wanting the best.
Thank you so much. So there you have it. If you'd allow me to recap what we gathered from what you shared today. The first is in creating value, Jude shares the importance of storytelling to create something meaningful, something people would care about, something that's memorable. And number two, deliver value. So creating value is not much when it isn't delivered or communicated well. And Jude shares the importance of finding ways, a different strategy to deliver value by creating meaningful experiences and having foresight or planning ahead. And number three, make it sustainable. So, in relation to planning ahead, Jude shares how creating value becomes even more impactful and sustainable when you provide a good reason for key stakeholders to work together. So, well, there's so much we've learned from you tonight, Jude, but now it's time for our next segment that we call Crunch Time. So,
Wow.
we're gonna throw you some questions, all right? And you're gonna have to answer them as fast as you can. So there's no need to explain unless we can't help but ask. So are you ready?
Sure.
All right. So first question is, um, the OG sportscaster boom or kaboom?
Kaboom.
Okay, favorite media network.
Oh, wow.
It's a tough
I will have to say ESPN.
one. Okay.
ESPN. Uh, yeah, no, it has to be. I guess for a long time it was also Fox Sports, but I'm a huge sports fan, and I could probably say the whole of the Fox Networks group because I loved my brand and I really embraced it. But I also think the reality is we really did have the best brands with Nat Geo, Fox, and Fox Sports. So I think it's still my favorite. You know, I mean, I can say TV5 and Signal and all that stuff, but that would be mainly because I want them to be my favorite, right? But if I'm gonna be honest, those were my favorites: Nat Geo and ESPN and Fox Sports.
Okay, appreciate the honesty there, and let's try to pick up the pace a little bit. Sports person or sports fan?
I would say Michael Jordan. I mean, I grew up in Chicago. I moved to Chicago the year he was drafted, and my formative years was with Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. So it's it's a cop out answer, but it's the real answer because I really lived there for 12 years while he was a star.
How about this? Sports that you excel in.
I'd like to think basketball. But like I said, I didn't make the varsity team of Ateneo, but maybe good enough at least for Team B. I don't know if I really excel in anything. I just try a lot of things, right? So like the latest thing is golf. I swim, I run. I do a lot of things. I played volleyball. In fact, that's probably where I'm the best at volleyball. I played volleyball in high school. I played club, and that's probably where I'm the best at. But again, I don't know if how how good I really was or how relevant that is.
All right. Okay. Favorite coach. Quick.
Oh, Phil Jackson.
Okay.
Again.
Most
Great.
memorable sports experience.
Uh, wow. I would probably say calling the game of UE and Ateneo Final Four when Jack Chia hit the winning shot back in 2002. And that was memorable because it was the day after my son was born. So I went from the hospital to the stadium and then called that shot. So that's probably the most memorable sports experience.
Your favorite sports film?
It's probably for basketball, absolutely Hoosiers. But as a sports film, there's this film called Friday Night Lights that I really like. about American football. So that's probably my favorite sports film, but the Hoosiers comes close second.
Okay. All right. So, okay, just one question, quick, no need to explain, okay?
Okay.
End goals or process goals?
End goals.
Okay, nice.
Hobbies in life apart from sports.
Reading.
Favorite non-sports film?
Naked Gun.
Favorite color?
I'm old. Purple.
Favorite food.
Buffalo wings.
Skills learned during the pandemic?
Uh, oh, being a Zoom meter.
Okay,
Meeting.
fair enough. Okay, if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
To make people the best athletes possible.
Favorite book.
I'll have to say Ice to Eskimos.
Person who made the biggest influence in your life?
My parents, two persons, my mom and dad.
Nice. Life purpose in 3 words.
Whew. I guess be happy, fulfilling, and helping people. 4 words.
Right. Last question. Favorite quote.
Favorite quote. Damn, it's tough when you don't prepare, no?
Lunch time.
So I'll use a Jesuit quote na lang. I think it was Father Arupe, a Spanish Jesuit. It said, "Tú tienes eternidad para descansar," which means you have all of eternity to rest. Meaning, just kind of focus on getting things done while you're in this life.
Nice. What a great way to end our crunch time. So thank you so much, Jude, for sharing your experience and time with us, and for being super game to answer our questions today. But before we move on, we can't end this episode without hearing something iconic from you. I don't know if you already have an idea about this, but we have to hear it. Okay, ready. Set yourself up for the 3-point. Come on.
San Agustin hits the 3. That's what you wanted to hear.
Yeah, I was about to say, Simone dribble drive, gives it to Robbie, kicks out for 3, San Agustin for 3, kaboom!
Well, okay, I'll be honest, I never really got to experience it because I wasn't I guess I was too young to see it at the time, but now I finally get to experience it firsthand. But thank you for that. And so now we've come to the end of our episode for our final messages. And so Relly and Robbie, let's share with our teammates what we have in store for them in our next episodes.
So there you have it, folks. On behalf of the Gold Diggers, I would like to thank you and, of course, Jude Turcuato for joining us tonight. Please do share your thoughts with us on our Facebook page and tag the Gold Diggers PH. Or you can post or comment on our video uploads on Facebook and YouTube. We'd really love to hear from you guys. Thank you also to everyone who has followed us on our Facebook page and subscribed to our YouTube page. If you haven't liked or followed us, we hope you can click that button and continue to dig with us. Tune in after the Holy Week break and catch our parenting episode entitled Raising a Champion. We start off with Taekwondo World Champions Japoy and Janice Lizardo. Got any question for the Lizardos? Hit us up on our Facebook page. See you guys. Robbie, take us home, man.
Thanks, Relly. So this episode was a lot of fun and a lot of learning we picked up along the way as well, no? So, Jude, thanks so much. Your sports-filled life story so far is an example of creating and delivering meaningful work. And we thank you so much for the time, the wisdom, the experience that we shared with us and to the rest of our listeners. So, thanks to you, there's a lot we can learn from sports and especially in creating value and optimizing our purpose. So, maraming salamat. Teammates, we're very happy with the response we're getting so far with our inaugural Sports Events Essentials episodes that we've posted on our social media pages so far. And as mentioned, this is part of our ambitious mission of helping uplift and progress Philippine sports by providing training and support through the Gold Diggers podcasts and coming soon, our learning series. So please check out our Facebook page for more details on our Sports Events Essentials virtual learning sessions and see how you can participate in that program. Lastly, once again, let's continue our fundraising for our advocacy, Pitch in PH. Let's continue helping out our fellow Filipinos who are in most need. Please follow our Facebook page for more details on how you too can learn how to pitch in for PH. So, over to the man of the hour, Jude Turcuato, your final message for this episode, please.
Well, thank you so much to everyone for watching and listening. Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Sim. Thank you, Relly. It's been an absolute pleasure talking about all this stuff. I've told all of you before that I don't know if there's any other time that I can actually get to talk about these things because I don't know if anybody else would be interested in some of these things. But I do hope that I was able to kind of entertain and help and give some insight on how my life has been, and then hopefully people can use it to get some sort of fulfillment as well, and some success in their lives, right? So until then, I hope that everybody stays safe, everybody gets a rest during this Holy Week, and more power to the Gold Diggers. Peace.
So we hope you enjoyed this episode with Jude Turcuato on how to create value. And that ends our session for today. So catch you on the next episode of The Gold Diggers. Remember to dream, dig in, and win. Take care and see you.